no decision that we're taking on the health front that has these terrible economic impacts is being taken lightly. Every day someone is in a job for just another day is worth fighting for. Where the health advice enables that, every day I can keep an Australian in work. Every day I can get that little bit more of support by keeping those things running. The more we can do that every day matters, because it matters to the person whose job it is. It matters to the business that has been built by someone over many years. It matters to their families, and that means it matters to me and it matters to all the premiers and chief ministers. So we will not take these decisions lightly. We will not take them for a matter of convenience, because every decision we are taking, we understand, has very real personal impacts for individuals and for families, and the stresses that it can place upon them at the most difficult of times. Today we've decided to take further actions targeted at what is our greatest area of concern, and Dr Murphy will speak more to that. What we're announcing today enables us to deal with the increasing pressure we have from Australians coming home. And the reason we can focus on that is because of the great work Australians have done, particularly over the course of the past week, on getting on top of their own movements and their own behaviours. It means we can focus even more on these critical areas that are our greatest risk at this point in time. 2/3 of the cases that we currently have are from an Australian who has come home. 2/3. That is very different to what we're seeing in other parts of the world. Our biggest issue, the biggest number of cases, relate to this. And as time has gone on, the risk of those who are returning from other parts of the world actually increases, because more countries have the virus. Where Australians have been, they've been there for longer and they've been more exposed. And so we're going to take further measures today to strengthen the enforcement of the self-isolation that is put in place for people returning through our airports in particular. This is the isolation declaration card for coronavirus. Everyone who has been coming into Australia now for some time has had to fill this out. On this, they make a declaration. They say who they are, they say where they're going to self-isolate, they tell us what their phone number is, their passport numbers, and they sign up to the self-isolation. This is enforceable by law. If you have come back into Australia, you need to live up to this pledge, and the state and territory governments are going to make sure you do. And there are strong penalties for those who don't comply with this, and those states and territories are already moving in their enforcement measures. But today we believe we need to go even further, in addition to the arrival declaration and the support of legislation that is put behind that. So by no later than midnight tomorrow, that's 11:59 p.m. Saturday, states and territories will be quarantining all arrivals through our airports in hotels and other accommodation facilities for the 2 weeks of their mandatory self-isolation before they are able to return to their home. If their home is in South Australia or in Perth or in Tasmania and they have arrived in Melbourne, they will be quarantining in Melbourne. If it's in Sydney, it will be in Sydney. If it's Brisbane, and so on. This same situation we put in place, particularly for the case that you'll be aware of in Western Australia in relation to the Vasco da Gama and the returning vessel there in terms of these arrangements. And the Western Australian Premier Mark McGowan will be having more to say about that. But each state will be doing the heavy lifting themselves to support their other states, and I thank them for the reciprocal nature in the way they're putting these arrangements in place. It's a great team to be part of with the premiers and the chief ministers. They understand they need to share each other's burdens to ensure that we can manage this issue together as a nation. This will be enforced by the state and territory governments. The Commonwealth will be supporting them with all manner of assistance which will relate to the work done by the Border Force, logisticians and other supports that will be necessary, but those arrangements will be run by the state and territory governments in each state. We will be supporting them also by providing members of the Australian Defence Force to assist in the compliance with these arrangements. Now, I want to stress, members of the Australian Defence Force are not authorised as enforcement officers regarding prosecution in states and territories. That is the responsibility of law enforcement officers so sworn in those jurisdictions. The ADF will be there to support those enforcement authorities. And so we will be turning out the Defence Forces to support compliance with these new arrangements. It will require that cooperative and facilitative support, and I have no doubt the Defence Forces will do that in the most sensitive way that they can, but it is necessary. The other thing we are doing is we will be supporting the states and territories in the important work they have of enforcing the existing isolation arrangements for people who are already here. And the ADF will be supporting those states and territories with compliance checks to ensure that people are at their residences that they have so sworn that they would be at, to ensure we get compliance with the self-isolation. Again, if there is a situation where people are non-compliant, of course the enforcement authority is the state jurisdiction and the relevant law enforcement agency in that state. But the ADF will be there to put boots on the ground to support them in their enforcement efforts, and I thank the ADF for their great support in turning up to this task. We believe these important actions are the most important we can take right now because of what you've done, Australia. By you getting on board with the changes that you've needed to make, this means we can target our efforts even more into these areas where we believe the most critical concern is right now. Now, also today, on the economy, we were briefed by the Treasury Secretary, Dr Kennedy, and states and territories were given a very extensive understanding of the impacts that we're potentially dealing with. The Treasurer and I will have more to say about that in the next few days as we are preparing to put in place the third tranche of the measures that will be there to support Australians further as we go through the many difficult months that are ahead.